essentially what we're doing is we're taking 45-minute to an hour long lesson topics, essentially on topics ranging from budgeting to investing and everything in between.
This is the Money Seed Podcast, where we discuss all things investing, plain and simple, the way it should be. Please remember, this show is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not intended to be investment advice. Welcome back to the Money Seed Podcast. Today, my guest is Shawn Varshney. Shawn, along with his brother, started a nonprofit called Financial Literacy for You, also known by the acronym FLY, and he's on a mission to educate youngsters in America about financial literacy. Shawn, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Shawn, this is very close to my heart because I often complain on these episodes here that there just isn't enough financial education in America. And so it looks like you and your brother have started a nonprofit to teach high schoolers about financial literacy. And I think right now you're also working with the California State Legislature to get a bill passed to make it mandatory. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But first, let's start at the beginning. Why did you and your brother start this nonprofit?
Correct. So first up, thank you so much for having me. Kind of what we looked at as being high school students ourselves. And Fly started way back in 2018. And I was in middle school at the time. My brother was in high school. So being the students we were and kind of being able to look around and see what's happening in our environment. One simple trip down to Sacramento kind of really opened up our perspectives on why are there homeless people? Why are there people that can't necessarily take care of their budgets? And what gets people to that point? And we were inspired to really kind of take a deep dive into these compounding issues of financial illiteracy with that downtown Sacramento trip. And we decided that we have to take initiative. And if you look at the root stem of what causes people into financial hardship, it's simply the case of not having enough knowledge, financial illiteracy. So that's why we went out and we said, how can we educate youth about kind of bridging the gap between the concepts that you may not want to learn at such a young age, but are so influential for you pretty much your whole life. And the reality is that the average American has less than $500 in their savings account. They've got like literally nothing. And many are in debt, extreme debt. We see rising student debt. You topple inflation with that. And it just kind of progresses into a larger problem. So we kind of saw this as an opportunity to kind of give back to the community and address financial literacy where it should. And that's in the young age. So students can kind of know what to expect in college, what they're going to be doing, such as opening up a credit card, applying for student aid, any of these types of content that students are not normally taught in school. We wanted to bring to them in a fun kind of educational peer-to-peer based learning.
And Shawn, tell us right now, what does the typical curriculum look like? What are you teaching high schoolers?
Sure. So essentially what we're doing is we're taking 45-minute to an hour long lesson topics, essentially on topics ranging from budgeting to investing and everything in between. So some of our very simple kind of where we start benchmark basics are going to be topics such as opening up a budgeting account. What exactly is income? What are expenses? How do you manage cash flow? So we start from the basics and we kind of move on from basic ideas such as cash flow to more complex topics like, okay, what is the concept of credit? How exactly do you open up a credit card? What is the process of applying for a credit card? Why is it important to have a good credit score? What can you do right now to kind of make sure that you have a high credit score and you'll have a good possibility of getting a proper interest rate for your student loans? So it kind of just progresses, especially based on our age groups. But the typical lessons consist of a slideshow, interactive, where we're kind of working back and forth with the students, asking them questions. They're asking us questions, and of course, there's prizes for people that participate. And then we move on to kind of a worksheet where they're actually applying it piece by piece. And then we wrap up with the Kahoot. So it's like a pretty much you learn the concepts themselves, you apply them on paper, and then you do a wrap up with kind of a game where you can see, okay, how do I measure myself compared to my peers on what I just learned?
And Shawn, how does the school board and the school bureaucracy give you guys time to do it?
Yeah, sure. So essentially what we do is we don't have, many of us don't have a last period class. So for those of us that do teach at the elementary, middle, and other kind of high schools throughout the area, we just use that last period of the day to go in and kind of do a lesson with them for their 7th period. And sometimes we do have to leave school a little bit early to make it out to some of our far distant locations. But generally, we just take off the last period, which is unscheduled for us anyways, and then we go out and teach. And then for the other locations like boys and girls clubs, we're usually teaching in the evenings. So it works out for pretty much all of our instructors as well as the participants too, because now we're not necessarily right in the middle of the day where of course there's school and other activities going on.
And Shawn, on your website, I saw that you started out in the Sacramento area and now you have volunteers helping you out in Southern California as well. How big is the organization now?
Correct. Yeah. So right now we've grown substantially. We're looking at about 40 to 50 instructors that we've got on our team. We're teaching at least 15, 16 locations right now, and it's still kind of growing. You know, there's so many people involved, and of course, we've got regional directors too. So out in SoCal, we've got leadership and management for the schools that are being taught to out there, as well as their youth institutions. So we've definitely been growing a lot, and I think it's great that we're able to kind of increase our influence on the community.
And Shawn, what has been the response so far?
It's been great. You know, the teachers love it, the students love it, because again, they see it as not only an hour off of a normal kind of lesson, but also an opportunity to learn some of these topics that they're going to be using throughout their whole life and win prizes, right? So the students love it. Teachers think it's great because obviously this is something that's never been taught in school before, and it's kind of just overlooked completely, but they understand how important it is for students to be learning it. And of course, with our lessons and the way that we carry out the plans, it fits into their schedule and what they expect for us to be teaching and for how we're supposed to be teaching as well. So they love it, teachers, students, the people who actually run the organizations themselves, like principals, and then you've got your staff directors at some of these nonprofits. They're all very appreciative of the fact that we're coming in, and you can kind of see a tangible difference for the people that have been with us from 2018, where they'll come back and say, okay, I actually used topic XYZ in this blah, blah, blah that I did. You know, if I went out on the weekend, hey, you know, now I see why it's important. I see what you guys are talking about with budgeting, for example, right? Now I can see what I have to do and actually apply it in my own life.
That's pretty amazing. I mean, you guys have only been around for about 5 years, but it sounds like you already have some returning students telling you that you've made an impact on their lives.
Absolutely.
In your opinion, what are some of the biggest mistakes young people are making in their financial lives?
Yeah, so first up, I would definitely say overlooking finances completely. And what I mean by that is that many youth, whether or not your parents pay for your Friday getaways or they pay for XYZ in your life, or maybe you have a job and you're actually paying for things yourself. I think one thing that's looked over tremendously is the importance of kind of putting money away for savings and why you should be saving. I think a lot of people kind of live in the moment. So even for the people that I know that are in high school and they work their own jobs, they pay for their car, they pay for everything. They're doing a great job. But what happens is that any income that comes in, the same amount goes out for all their expenses, or even they'll take out loans, and then it's kind of like that thought in the back of your head that, okay, now I really need to figure out a way to save, which is not easy, especially if you're not willing to kind of cut back on some of your wants, right? Whether that's weekend spending, etc. So I definitely say it's not looking ahead is a major issue for many youth. Second off, I would say being influenced by social media, I think, has a major impact, especially for Gen Z, because many people are kind of looking at, okay, influencer, whoever is promoting this product. They're saying if I do X, Y, Z, I can make this much money over time. I can try this drop shipping, whatever. I can do blah blah blah. But the reality of the situation is that it's not really good advice. It's not from people that have built their own wealth or actually have any credible experience with the financial industries or institutions, and they know how to kind of build a balanced budget, how to put money away for later, how to actually build wealth. And then they go on social media and they're influencing the next generation. And then we kind of wonder why people have no money at all. They just go completely broke. And it's because they're spending money on even this crypto stuff too. You know, I mean, it's kind of unfortunate, but a lot of people kind of jump onto these crazes and then they're not really sure what to go or what to do after that. Third off, I would definitely say a major issue that Gen Z has is kind of not willing to take information and actually apply it in their life. And what I mean by that is that many youth, not the youth that we work with, because they actually want to learn, they're there to help their future. But many other youth are just too lazy, or they think that financial topics are too kind of bland. So they'll see a topic like credit or credit scores, and they'll say, "Hey, this isn't interesting. You know, I'd rather just go out and play some video games or do X, Y, Z in their life." But they're not looking far ahead enough to the point of the importance of the fact that they are going to need financial literacy throughout their whole life. And it doesn't matter what kind of background you come from, you need to know how to manage your finances. And I think the people that are just too lazy or don't want to take the time to learn some topics that might be a little bit more complex end up not receiving the benefit of the people that are willing to take the time to better their future by learning.
And Shawn, if you had to give advice to somebody who's in their late teens or early 20s, what would be maybe the top 2 or 3 tips that you would give them?
Yeah, so I definitely say, number one, just put money away, meaning that if you're earning, which many people are, even in high school, you pick up a job or at 15, 16, I would say try and put over half of your money away of whatever you're earning into a savings account. And if you can't do half, then figure out a way to kind of balance your needs and wants, because it's such a simple topic that people just don't spend enough time on. So if you're thinking about a Starbucks latte or that special music subscription that you want, and you're not able to save money, what can you do to kind of reduce that pitfall and make sure that you can actually put enough money away for where you want to see yourself in 10 years out in the future? So I definitely say cutting back on needs and wants and building a balanced budget is number one. Number two, I would definitely say is going to be learning about worldly news. And what I mean by that is what's going on in the environment around you, especially right now when we see rising inflation. Everything is at a very high cost. It doesn't matter where you want to look at. A lot of ignorant people are going to say, I don't want to waste my time and kind of get too political about what's going on in the economy, what's going on in politics, etc. But I definitely think that's important that you know kind of what's happening in legislature, what's kind of happening on your home front too. Meaning, okay, if this proposition bill is being put into law and I get to vote on it, what should I vote on it? Well, yeah, you absolutely should vote on it. You should know the terms of what it's going to do for you. How is it going to affect inflation? How is it going to affect your taxes? How is it going to affect all these other kind of metrics that many people don't want to get too involved in? I definitely say that you should pay attention to, because they're going to directly impact you one way or another, whether that's, your budget. It's going to be there, and you don't care until it starts affecting you, right? So if you look at inflation too, most people are like, oh, gas prices go up, whatever. It's not for my town, but then it does happen in their town, and then they look back and they're like, oh, maybe I should have done something about that earlier, right? So it's just kind of simple things like that. I think can definitely make a difference.
And Shawn, I think that is a great segue into the political process, because you yourself, as a high schooler, are directly involved in a bill that is before the California State Legislature. Tell us more about that.
Correct. Yeah. So that's going to be Assembly Bill 984. And it's proposed by Assemblyman McCarty, kind of trying to build a curriculum that would require high school students to take one semester of a 5-credit personal finance course. And this would be a mandatory course that would be required for graduation. Every student across the board would have to take it. So it's very similar to kind of the process of taking a health or an introduction to technologies class, with the exception of it being geared towards finance and kind of critical economic information that these students are going to be using throughout their whole life. So for me personally, I think it's a major kind of lead into where students have to be going and where they should have been going a long time ago. I think that this can benefit every single student across the board, because if you look at California being the state with the highest number of high school students, and you look at the extreme poverty in many cases that our state has, doesn't matter where you want to look, what major city you want to go to, it can all be prevented at the forefront of where all these kind of topics come up. And that is the educational institutions that are preparing our next generation to be successful in their careers and overall well-being. And the way to kind of bridge that gap and kind of ensure that some of these students don't end up having a lot of financial hardship is by tackling the problem itself. And that's by learning it across the board. Every single student, doesn't matter if you want to learn it or if you don't want to learn it. If you want to do something else or you don't want to do something else, you have to learn it with this course. And I think that that's major, because now every single student, public high school student, which there are literally millions that make up like 90% of California high school students, would now be given the exact same opportunity as their peers that might be coming from different backgrounds, better in many cases, more affluent backgrounds. Everybody gets the exact same level of playing field. And I think that's major, because now you'll have better prepared individuals for their careers as well as college too. So that's pretty much what's going on with that. And again, it has not been signed yet. They're working on creating a formal kind of policy as to what content would be introduced, what exactly would be the skills that would be tangibly brought to the students. So right now it's just in the forming kind of process, and then it has to be approved by the assembly itself. But I think that bipartisan support, which there is on this bill, is major, and I think it can definitely have a great impact going forward.
That's excellent. And Shawn, when will we find out if the bill passes or not? How close is it?
Yeah, so it's looking like about a year out, year to 2 years out. I mean, it's going to take some time. And if this bill were to be passed, it would not be implemented in public schools until 2028, because there are a lot of kind of policies that you have to look at with the educational institution. And there would have to be another class being dropped for this bill to be passed. Because of course you can't tack on another 5 credits for a graduation requirement. They'd have to pull something else out. So these are all kind of topics that are being discussed right now, and they're trying to work something out into how this can be incorporated. Right now, introduction to computer technologies is looking like the course that would be replaced by personal finance, because most people already know how to use a phone, or they already know how to use Google Documents, etc. So it's looking like this has the great possibility of kind of being a formal bill passed within the next year to 2 years. And if it were to be passed, once this bill's contents are made, everything is put together, 2028 would be the first year where students would walk in and they'd be taking a personal finance course at their local high school.
And Shawn, if this bill were to pass, how would California compare to other states in the union with respect to mandatory high school financial education?
That's a great question. I think it would definitely make California a more established kind of student body. And what I mean by that exactly is if you look at states like Florida and some of the more kind of East or Midwest states that have mandated a personal finance course, they are already reporting students saying that, hey, you know, these courses already made a difference. I used them in college. I used XYZ topics in college. And now I have a leg up compared to everybody else that's not being taught these same skills. So if you look at kind of what's happening and how California is behind, I would say that California is not getting the benefit that some of these mandated states are, because we're not being taught that same curriculum. So unless you actually go out of your way to learn it right now, or you have a group like us come and teach it to you, you're not being given the same knowledge as somebody sitting down in Florida would be. So when they go to college, they'll be saving money left and right, and then you'll be struggling to kind of understand how to even start, right? So I think that definitely it's going to also bring California up to speed too. And I know that it's more of a kind of economically capitalistic, not to be political, kind of bill that's being introduced. But at the same time, if you look at the positive effects that it has for everybody across the board, and like I said, it does not matter what background you come from. Personal finance is an absolutely important skill that you need to have. So for the states that, yes, maybe conservative states that have already passed it, there's no doubt that those states definitely have a leg up compared to California right now, where students are not being taught that same content.
Yeah, and I'll just give you an anecdotal piece of evidence. So I had a guest recently on my show, Alex Edwards, a great episode, by the way. And he grew up in Boston, and in high school, he took a real estate investing course. Now, it wasn't part of like the regular curriculum. He had to go to night school. I think it was offered at like the adult education place where like adults go to get their high school degree, but it was free, right? So as a teenager, he signed up. He went there for like during the evenings for a few weeks, and he completed this credit in real estate investing. And it was a home ownership course or something similar.
For sure.
And that directly led to him buying his first investment property at age like 21, 22. And now he's like, you know, in his late 30s, and that's what he does full time now. He's a real estate investor full time now, and he's basically achieved financial independence. I mean, I know that's like crazy success story. That's
some amazing stuff, man. That guy knew his stuff, and look what he did though. He got in early, right? And he already had that knowledge in his head as a high school student. So when he was put into the real world where everything was moving around him left and right, he knew what he wanted. And he knew kind of what was available in real estate markets too, right? So I think that's amazing, and you can kind of see that the younger you start, the more opportunities you have as you grow older, right? Because instead of just being maybe somebody who is starting in real estate at the age of 25, for example, he started in high school, right? So that's so impressive that you can kind of see the difference that it made in his life moving forward by starting so early, right?
Absolutely. And it's funny because during the episode, I specifically asked him, I said, did that high school course, like, did it help you buy your first property? Did it make you more knowledgeable and more confident? And did you actually have many takeaways? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. That directly led to his first purchase of an investment property in his early 20s. So yeah, these courses definitely do have positive impacts on people's lives. And to get back to your comment, the biggest thing that I wish I could drive home to your generation is you have time in your favor, right? And compound interest takes like 30, 40 years to work its magic. So if your goal is to have let's say you can have many different financial goals in your life, but if your financial goal is to have a really comfortable retirement, right? If you start in your early 20s, it's going to be much, much easier for you than somebody who starts in their like late 30s or early 40s. Only because like even though you guys are both investing in the same things, let's say you're both investing $1,000 a month or whatever, because you have an extra 15, 20 years of compound interest before you hit 60, 65, that's going to work miracles in the final size of that nest egg by the time you're 60, 65. That lesson alone to start early, I think, is probably one of the biggest lessons out there. But there's so many other ones. And I think, like you said, they're specific. A lot of the other lessons are specific to our laws, like how the credit cards work or how mortgages work and that kind of thing. And these are things that everyone must know about, right? Like a house is typically the most expensive thing most people ever buy in their entire life, right? That is the single biggest purchase. And most people kind of walk into it not really knowing how the whole process works, right?
And not at all. They don't know how it's going to affect them like 10, 15 years out either. So.
And Shawn, I think some of the other things are pitfalls, right? And I'll give you an example. I think people need to be aware of some of the pitfalls because some of the business practices, not all, but some of the business practices out there are predatory, right? They prey on the fact that people are not knowledgeable and they don't really know the basics math. I'll give you a typical example. You go and you buy a car and you go to this dealership and you sit down and you have no idea how the game works, right? And so the dealership starts asking you these questions like, oh, how much can you afford per month? And then you start playing with them. You start answering. The next thing you know, you're happy because you walk away with a shiny new car. But in reality, you got a horrible deal. You're paying 12% interest. You're going to be paying these car payments for like 7-8 years sometimes. And the reality is you got screwed because you just were not educated before you walked in the door.
Exactly. And I think that's what the majority of people do. They don't take the time to kind of learn of what a good deal is. And then they get taken advantage of by, for example, a car salesman. Especially, I feel if you're buying a used car, then you really see some people kind of lose big in that front too. But I think that's totally true. And if you look at the rules of compounding too, back to that, the stock market, if you're just buying a typical Vanguard, S&P 500, whatever, if you're just buying the market, the most basic thing that you can possibly do, the market doubles every 7 to 8 years itself. It doesn't matter what you want to look at. Every 6 to 8 years, the market is going to double. That's just how the way it works, essentially, the way it's been throughout history. And the truth to the fact is that 90% of the population does not know that, right? I mean, they just look at the stock market or the real estate market as kind of being a whole crazy, complex kind of system, but in reality, it's not, right? And if you look at people that are able to put away money, start early, like your other guest, for example, in real estate, they already are going to be winning and already have that money double, triple, quadruple by the same time that somebody just learning later on in their life how these things work while they're just getting started, right?
Yep.
So it definitely makes a difference.
Absolutely. And I'll throw some numbers at you, right? If you start early, you don't have to take big risks. What I mean is, let's say you're 23 years old and you and your partner are living together. So you're sharing the costs of like housing and food and everything. You can save $500 a month. Your partner can save $500 a month. Together, you're saving $1,000 a month, right? Which is very doable. I don't care what anyone says. It's very doable. And if you can't do it, then get a part-time job and do it. $500 a month, right? It's very doable. So together you're investing $1,000 a month. That's all you got to do. And you put it in the same Vanguard, professionally managed, ETF, etc. By the time you're like, fast forward 40 years, by the time in your like early 60s, that thing is going to be worth $3 million. You're going to retire comfortable. That's on top of like Social Security or whatever else. Like that's it. You have no financial worries. Whereas if that same couple just has, if they don't do it, they want to get the fancy car, they want to go on the cool vacations, they want to have a $50,000 wedding, what have you. If they start that same game in like their late 30s, early 40s, they're going to be nowhere near that, right? Because they missed out on 2 doublings, right? You're just talking, let's say they double every 8 years, they just missed 2 doublings. Now, if they want to have the same comfortable retirement, either they have to put away a lot more than $1,000 a month, or they have to take more risky investments, right?
Absolutely.
And like the best thing you can do for yourself as a youngster is to start early. And
Yeah.
another thing is, I'm really curious about your generation. How do you guys look at student loans? And I'll give you a specific example. I'm in my mid 40s. So when I went through college, I also took out student loans, but college was a lot more affordable back then. How
Definitely.
does somebody in your generation, or what advice would you give someone who is your classmate, who is looking at going to college and weighing the pros and cons? Like, I really want to take this major in college, but you know what? The graduates are just not getting that kind of, they're not getting a very high salary, but
Not
that's
gonna-
my passion. But at the same time, I'm going to be like $100,000 in debt when I graduate. How do you weigh the pros and cons of that?
Yeah, so I definitely say that it's a major issue for sure. Student debt and kind of people walking into college expecting that they'll be able to pay off. Doesn't matter what college you want to look at. If you want to look at Ivy League institutions and you're looking at your Harvard kind of graduates, if you're not majoring in the majors that are going to be something where you'll be making enough money for yourself to comfortably pay off how much you're putting up front to attend that college, I would definitely say that you got to consider changing kind of your thinking process of either where you want to go or where you want what you want to major in. And the reason I say that is because I don't know how many examples there are of people that end up going to college at a very prestigious institution. If you look at a Princeton or a Harvard or a Yale, and you major in an arts or a humanity, but you don't have enough money to pay it off, then you're stuck with like literally $400,000 for the rest of your life that you kind of have to go back and continuously add on to piece by piece to try and get that debt to go down. And it's very hard, especially if you're majoring in something that there might not be a lot of exit opportunities in. So I think that the real thing that you have to consider at the end of the day is what I'm considering and majoring in going to give me a good exit opportunity? And if it does, how much am I willing to put up front for that college cost? Because I know that I'll have to pay it off long term. And I don't want to step into a deal like the Harvard situation where, yeah, you get a degree from Harvard, but there's no jobs at the end of the day. There's not a lot of opportunities for you. Or if there is an opportunity, then you're not going to be making enough to kind of efficiently pay it off. And if you look at the statistics on it too, there are quite a few people who literally have student debt for their whole lives. Like some people unfortunately die with their student debt, and they're just not able to pay it off. That's the reality of the situation. So I think that you definitely have to do your own research. You should pick somewhere where you think is affordable moving forward, and you should major in something that will give you enough money to cover that college cost and for you to be living a comfortable life. And of course, there's the huge student loan forgiveness debate that's going on right now. It's an interesting topic for sure, because I know that there's people that have paid off their student loans and they're thinking, hey, why didn't we get the same kind of benefit? Why didn't we also get the opportunity to have the government kind of cover some of the student debt for us? So they think that they're missing out on it. Then the people who are in college right now or still have student debt, but it's still eligible for them to get removed, they're saying, hey, well, COVID came, XYZ, now we shouldn't have to pay. I think if you look at the middle kind of debate, I definitely do think on a just kind of basis, I feel like people should pay off their own student debt for the reason being that you chose to do that kind of career path. You chose to attend that institution, and that was on your own kind of basis. And I feel like it would be unfair to the people who have paid their way legitly the whole way through, right? And that's, again, it just goes back to the situation where you're not doing enough research beforehand, where you get stuck with an insane amount of debt, and then not enough money with the job for you to be paying it off. So it definitely just, again, comes down to research and then thinking 10 years out. The internet is super helpful. You can literally find anything. If you're thinking about attending a certain college, you can look at their alumni on LinkedIn. You can look at so many different kind of metrics to measure where you'll be in 5 years, where you'll be in 10 years, what kind of money you'll be making in 5-10 years. And will that be sufficient enough to cover the cost of the institution that you plan on attending?
Absolutely. And Shawn, right now, do you think students today in high school in California, do they get some help with that research? I mean, it's not hard research, but are you guys, do you have classes or do you have meetings with guidance counselors to teach you and help you with that?
That's a great question. So I go to Oak Ridge High School. It's a public high school itself, and I can tell you, we are a Tier 9 school. That's like the top of the top 10% of public high schools in California. So it's a pretty competitive school. We're known to have good teachers, good kind of student basis, good everything. But the reality is that you're on your own. You know, it's kind of sink or swim. You got to figure it out. What do you want to be doing in college? Do you want to go to college? Where do you want to go to college? The counselors, they have so many students. We have like 4 counselors, I think, for all 2,800 students. That's 700 students to every one counselor. And if you kind of look at how much time that they can individually spend on each student, it's very low, right? And that's not just for us. That's for every other public high school too. You got to do your own research, right? So my honest answer to that question would be no. You're not given a lot of resources at all. The one spot that I can kind of say might give you some help in kind of deciding what you want to do is the College Board website. That's like the one resource I can say that you again have to go to yourself. They're not going to email you or reach out. But if you take the advanced courses, if you take an SAT, they'll immediately email you back and say, okay, here's the college search. What do you do? If you plan on attending XYZ, here's the stats, here's what it looks like, here's the cost. But again, that's all on your own basis. If you want to look at it, you can look at it. If you don't want to look at it, nobody's going to come to you and then try and help you. You kind of have to go out there and figure it out for yourself.
Yeah, and what I always tell people, I got 2 daughters. The older one's in high school right now. The younger one is still in elementary school. But like my older one, that's why I tell my older one, I said, look, it's not difficult. You just have to spend the time with the research. And the things that I recommend that she look at are, let's say, I'm just going to make one up here, but let's say you're interested in physiotherapy. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Then most colleges have these statistics available. So you can research, for example, what percentage of the physiotherapy graduates from a certain college are employed, 1 year after graduation,
Absolutely.
5 years after graduation. These stats are readily available for every college, for most colleges. And also you can find out what is the average starting salary for someone who graduated from physiotherapy in XYZ college. And those two are huge. Like that right there is going to give you a ton of info.
Yeah, they're the most important indicators. And you can even look at like the 5-year median salary too. If you look at U.S. news reports too for XYZ majors of a certain college. So yeah, it's definitely out there. Great resources.
And then the other thing I would encourage people to do is if you are interested in a particular industry, see what people are making in that industry, but also look at what the unemployment rate is in that industry, right? Or what percentage of people with degrees in that industry are not working in that industry. And if someone wants to look at financial statements, which are available, for every publicly traded company, is figure out how profitable the companies are, right? Are companies in that industry, like in big tech, for example, these companies are running on 20, 30% net profit margins. The companies have the money to give you raises, give you bonuses, and be nice to employees. Whereas if you look at something like manufacturing, you might find that those companies are running on like 2% profit margins. And as soon as there's any kind of a hiccup in the economy, you're not going to get a bonus that year, or you might get laid off. And you can gauge the health of industries by looking at how well the companies are doing on the stock market in a way, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And all this information's out there. I just wish somebody would just sit down with high school students and hold their hand a little bit and say, here's all the info,
Absolutely. And I think it's really interesting, kind of the amount of students that don't take the time to do their own research, right? And then they'll walk into college kind of expecting that they'll be able to figure things out. But the reality of the situation is that many students cannot figure out how to pay off their tuition, how to pay off some of these other kind of expenses that come up. So I think that for the people that do take the time, they look at the cost, what major do I want to do? Another thing to consider too is that most high school students don't even know what they want to major in. A lot of them end up going to college, they'll switch a major like 3-4 times, right? And then they decide on one. But I think that if you can kind of think out long term, in high school, what you want to do, and you have your heart set on something, you can do a lot better and be a lot more successful because you're a straight shooter. You know what you want. Compared to somebody that kind of wavers, right? And they don't know what major they want to do, or it's kind of XYZ, not having enough information, then you end up choosing something that you didn't do enough research on, right? So I think definitely just taking the time out, it makes a huge difference for sure.
Shawn, bringing the conversation back to financial literacy for you, what is your goal with the organization?
Yeah. So my goal for the organization now at this point is just to continue expanding our operations. So that means, in addition to some of the schools that we teach at, I want to see some more kind of youth organizations get involved too. A major goal that we've been working on since 2021 has been getting something passed into public policy, and now that's actually that goal has the potential to become true. So that was one of our major kind of workings from 2018 to 2021 to mandate that for every single high school student. But from now going forward, it's just mainly focused on expanding operations. How can we expand our outreach? How can we get more people involved and kind of spread the awareness of what needs to be done for students to be financial literate? The resources that are out there, people that are willing to take their time and are hungry to better their future financial kind of standing. Those people always are very happy of what we do and kind of how we teach, what we teach, the content, because it ends up being used again every single time in your future. You're going to be using a credit card throughout your whole life. Or if it's not a credit card, then it'll be a debit card or a checkbook or some kind of way of managing your expenses. But for the people that start early, it definitely makes a difference. And that's what we're just trying to kind of spread the message right now and get moving in a couple other branches. So we've got one in SoCal too, potentially expanding somewhere further east, I think is what we'll probably try and be doing going forward. But for right now, it's just kind of reaching out to more organizations, seeing if we can work in some lessons and getting the awareness levels up.
And Shawn, I just want to say congratulations on all that you've done so far with financial literacy for you. And I can honestly say America needs you. America desperately needs this information because, I mean, it just breaks my heart that so many Americans, millions of Americans are struggling financially, be it, because they're young or, midlife or even in retirement. It doesn't have to be this way. I mean, this is one country where there's just so much opportunity for individuals to be financially healthy, financially stable. And I feel like you're helping bridge that gap. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And it definitely makes a difference on all of our ends too. And we can kind of see the tangible influence and people come back to us and kind of say, hey, now we see why it's so important for us to know how to manage credit, why we did these college kind of searches. And by the way, that content of kind of planning for college, how much is tuition, all those different kind of metrics, that is one of our lessons, actually. It's somewhere in the middle of what we do for our high school students. But I think that if we can just get that information to every single student in public high schools in California, we'll have such a better future. Less debt, less hardship, financial hardship, mental hardship, because people will be more prepared for addressing their finances, and they'll actually care about it enough to the point where they'll be able to manage their finances well enough.
That's excellent. Yeah. And Shawn, I know that you're also getting involved now with California politics, for better or for worse. And I just really hope your experiences don't turn you off politics. Because
definitely not. Right now, I mean, I know I'm still a while out from college. I mean, I'm a junior right now, so I still have like a year and a half. But I mean, it definitely is something that I'm interested in, kind of public policy and how that is influencing students and the general well-being of the public too. Because I think it's kind of overlooked many times, and how much the government does kind of have an influence on what's going on for the rising generation, kind of how finances are managed for people overall. So I think definitely that it's something that I'm going to be pretty excited about and working on in the future too. Kind of seeing what's being done on legislation um, moving forward.
Thanks very much, Shawn, for all your efforts. Shawn, as we move to wrap up this episode, where can people reach out to you to learn more?
Sure. So financialliteracyforyou.org is our website. It's spelled exactly how it sounds. And then if you're looking to reach me directly or reach any of the people that work on our end, the detail of contact is all on our website. But if not, I can just also give it over air. Varshney.Shawn, it's my last name, dot my first name, @gmail.com is my primary email address. And then my phone number is 916-990-4424. And we're up. We're up and working 9 to 5 essentially and past. So if you send an email or reach out sometime between then, we'll be sure to respond.
Shawn Varshney, co-founder and COO of Financial Literacy for You. Shawn, thanks for all your hard work and thanks very much for this interview.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate that.